Welcome to our November Connect event here at LifeGuides. Please forgive the delay for anyone waiting for us. And if you were waiting, we appreciate you. That means that you actually care and you want to be here. So thank you so much for being here. And we're going to jump right in today. We've got two wonderful panelists who are joining me on this edition of our Connect. So while everyone is piling in, and I see everyone piling in. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce first. I want to start with Serenity. Thank you so much for being here today, Serenity. Serenity is a resilience leader who's all about alternative living and embracing life's adventures. Despite overcoming childhood challenges, divorce, seasonal depression, Serenity transformed, and she believes you can too. Now she proudly shares that she's become a digital nomad, a world traveler, as well as a guide here with LifeGuides. Serenity is multi-passionate as an entrepreneur, as well as an author, an advocate for having an adventurous approach towards life. She looks forward to helping you live the life of your dreams. Thank you so much for being here today, Serenity.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And we have a first timer. So for our first timers, we like to haze them. I'm just joking. We don't haze here. No hazing at all. But we like to love on them and say thank you for being here. We appreciate you. And who I am referring to is Lillian. She had the honor of being her elderly grandmother's caretaker after her grandfather passed away. This experience of living with her elderly grandmother while raising three children, as well as later being a single parent, taught her the importance of advocacy and negotiations. She embraced the challenge of raising an autistic son during a time when society's understanding of autism was limited. However, her immigrant family's ethics of self-reliance, competitiveness, focus on education, and contributions to society, as well as compassion, all shaped who she is today, which is an international speaker on neurosensory development, a lecturer, a Jedi. Shout out to all the Jedis in the audience today, as well as a consultant and an occupational therapist and more. Thank you so much for being here today. Your first time. Welcome, Lily.
Thank you. Nice to be here. My honor.
Wonderful. So as we know, it is now November. Things are changing. Leaves are changing. On my way in earlier today, I noticed the orange and marigold colors floating around on everyone's doorstep, and it just reminds me that we're always changing, even though for most people change can be challenging, but change is typically one of the only constants, as well as life, death, and taxes, depending on who you talk to. So it really depends on your perspective. But let's jump right in, because today we're talking about change. We're talking about our changing seasons in life. And teeing it off, I want to start with a little bit of introspection, and I want to learn just a little bit more about how the both of you have changed during your life. Just if you can focus on one of the key changes that you'd like to share that's helped you on your journey. So Serene, let's start with you. What is one key change that you've noticed during your lifetime that you'd like to share with others?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to say that one major change was actually my mindset. That one was huge for me. As soon as I started seeing that I had the power to kind of create my own future, there's this actual famous quote that I have tattooed on me as well. It's the best way to predict the future is to create it. I started realizing that after, having that awakening with that, everything started transforming. I started being able to change where I wanted to be to experience those seasons. I started changing my mindset and seeing different seasons as opportunities of growth and what each one of them has to offer. And so I would personally say that that awakening was the biggest change for me.
Helpful. What about you, Lily?
Wow. I believe that we all innately have a strength within ourselves that we pull in from to grow to help us survive different things. And it is definitely a mindset that Serenity talks about. And you can either be the victim mindset, or you can be the one who is embracing change or embracing flexibility and learning. So my innate quality that was passed on to me with my family was the strength of self-reliance. And so therefore, using self-reliance, you can choose to move forward. You can choose to be flexible. You can choose to embrace learning as a lifetime tool, which I do. And because of that, everything is like, I'm like a little kid in a, candy store, because everything is so cool. Everything is, new and different. And it helps to, allow you to embrace what there is instead of staying stuck in what you know, thought it was going to be, but didn't happen that way.
Absolutely.
So now we're talking about changing, we're kind of settling in. What about people who maybe have change forced onto them? Lillian, for example, you talked about supporting your elderly grandmother. And, at times we are forced into situations where we may not have thought we would be at or thought we would have to navigate through. Tell me a little bit about your journey with supporting your grandmother, and how sometimes choices that are made, for us or lead us to a certain place, how that changes you.
That is a good question, because how I've applied my life experience, having lived with my grandmother, that choice was somewhat a cultural decision, because it was, my conviction that was sort of taught to me, but no one else picked up the cue, was Asian families do the extended family. And when my grandfather died, who was going to, it's not that she expected us to take care of her. At the same time, it was sort of taught to us that we do take care of one another. And at that time, I had two young kids. I was pregnant with my third one, who was born on her birthday. And so it was almost like, as Dave was saying, it was not that it was forced on me, and I made the active decision that I would welcome her to my home.
Mhm.
But it was sort of something where I felt, wow, I can't allow her to be in a nursing home. And so that was, I think we all do things because we think we're supposed to do it. And sometimes it works out well. And sometimes it's like you beat yourself up for doing things that maybe were not the best choices at that given time. And one additional thing I would say, it's always about timing. Is it ever the right time to make that decision and move? Is it the right time to accept certain things? And it's always maybe a spirituality thing that, that, okay, well, it's going to happen. And then you go with whatever has happened. You learn to adapt and then make use of it. So,
Yeah. I like that you mentioned adapt. Adapting is something that well, talking about your tattoos, Serenity, I have a tattoo that says adapt and overcome. And that came because I was always interested in how some species, some animals, specifically chameleons, can adapt to certain situations so that they can overcome challenges. And they're not the only one in the animal kingdom. I believe octopi, they can, I believe, change their structure at times depending on the predators. And it's important that we have this kind of grace for these challenges. So Serenity, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how, when dealing with change, one can be self-compassionate and have grace with those changes.
Absolutely. I, as somebody who regularly puts myself in new situations, I actually find that I've become kind of addicted to finding new situations to adapt to, because I actually have changed my mindset to see it as growth opportunity. Before, I had the mindset of, this is happening to me, this is happening against my will. This is something that's going against the grain of what I actually desire and what I want. And I was so fixated on a specific image or an outcome that I wasn't actually allowing myself to see the bigger picture. I was just had a narrow view. And so with that, I started kind of transforming that way of thinking. And as I transformed that way of thinking, I realized that my emotions also needed to catch up. Sometimes I'm also in the habit of running my mind first and my emotions have to catch up. So having that compassion after I have that mental acceptance was big for me as somebody that's a bit of a brainiac and like a bit of a nerd, you could say. So first kind of transforming it in the mindset of seeing that this is happening for me. This is allowing me to grow. What other opportunities could this open up for me, as well as what can I learn from this and what lesson comes with this? And then afterwards, after I'm able to have those questions and approach it with curiosity instead of judgment, then I can follow up with more compassion and saying, this is a lesson. It's okay. It's totally fine. Everything happens for a reason. What can we learn from this? So I'll give you an example more specifically. I'm actually in Peru right now. I am getting ready to do Machu Picchu in 2 weeks.
Nice.
and I foresee these first mentally. It's like, okay, do I want this? Yes, of course. I'm going to push myself mentally. I'm preparing myself for it. I see it. I've also come to have some challenges, right? Challenges with internet, challenges with being able to have that connectivity, challenges with some other work relationships as I'm here. But I see that it's actually elevating me in a way that I can better attune to these work relationships. I can become more resilient in that sense of being able to have A, B, and C backups for internet and having that reliability. And then having that grace, I'm only human, and then complimenting myself as well and knowing you're so good at coming up with a plan B. You're really great at this. And I adore you for being able to put all your effort into it. And just seeing myself as a human and acknowledging that, giving myself compliments and affirming things for myself, that really allows for me to move into grace and compassion.
Yes, and I'm hearing a lot of positive self-talk too, which can be challenging. People. I'll speak for myself. I'm still working on my self-talk. It's a continuous practice to kind of quiet that chattering, mind or voice that we hear in our head. I like that you mentioned that you're choosing to do things, like you're showing your agency, like you're making the choice, and you get to do something rather than I have to do something, where you feel kind of pressured by it, like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. So we're talking about adapting, and I want to go back to you, Lillian, because you've adapted through so many challenges, and you've done it, just as Serenity mentioned, with grace. So how, according to you, what's influenced your perspective on change?
I appreciate you thinking that I've gone through everything with grace. I haven't. I think that in my youth, or so somewhat like Serenity, I'm very cerebral, I'm very heady, I'm very geeky. So there's a lot of things that were typical for the 20s, drinking, smoking, whatever you wanted to do, free sex in my era. Remember, I'm the old lady here. I'm the senior citizen for those of you who didn't know, and I let everyone know that.
You're seasoned, which is deliciously great. There we go.
Yeah. Yes. And it's a wonderful thing because I can reflect back on all those decades. Okay. And I have more decades to go back to look at. And I also have a private practice where I can see how there's some commonality per decade, per the 20s, for the 30s, for the 40s, of how people react and what their urgency is. So how I've gotten through that is that I haven't, as Dr. Dave and Serenity have, is that it is your self-talk. What is it that you're placing on yourself that creates that negativity or that positivity of you moving forward? You in my recent decades, I've realized that I'm choosing love over fear. So when you start talking about negativity and how things are going the wrong way and then becoming the victim and just being so immobilized by that anxiety or that situation that might have thrown you off your track, then what happens is that you need to give yourself grace, as he says, or you need to say to yourself, hey, you know what, I'm still learning. I don't have all the answers, but I'm learning, and I'm able to correct my course from that learning versus stay stuck in what I don't know. And what's wonderful now is that people are allowing mental health or helping yourself to be more of a acceptable. In my era, it was the mom was the martyr. She did everything. And then the feminist movement came in, and we as women had to think that we had to do everything. And now it's almost like, hey, you know what? We're trying to teach other people to be self-reliant, even though we will always be the nurturers and we will always be the caretakers, depending on your personality. But that doesn't mean that you can't put yourself first. So that whole analogy of putting the mask on you first before you put it on,
Right.
child, I'm still learning how to do that. I'm still giving of myself. I'm like the serve that man, serve that other people first before I serve myself. So Life Guides has been a wonderful tool. I'm surrounded by some wonderful role models, wonderful people who encourage and support me. And I hope Life Guides will do that for you too, because we hope to have a safe community of where we learn from one another. Not one way is the right way. It's how it fits into your cultural background and how you morph it. But the most important is taking care of yourself first. And I've learned that, sort of. We're still learning. It's a lifelong learning thing. But thanks for asking.
And
No,
it's a
no,
continual balance. Sorry.
no,
Yeah.
go for it. It is a continual balance.
I was just gonna say it's a continual balance. Like it's something that almost is like you have to regularly check in with yourself on it too. And it's kind of like before when you were talking about questioning, like questioning, is this the right time? Does this feel good? What is more equal for this situation? Because each situation is always going to look different. So it's something that again is one of those perpetual cycles of regularly checking in to find that balance, right? So it's like here in our conversation, we're finding that balance of give and take. And can I comment on this? And can I talk here? And it's the same thing in conversations that we have day to day. Like, okay, it's now their turn to speak. Or, hey, I can insert in here and also give my opinion. And because I'm also of value as well, but I genuinely want to hear what they have to say. And I'm going to approach this with curiosity because I see them as an equal. So it's one of those things where we have to regularly check in with ourselves. And that's something I've fallen into where I've been too much on the cusp of a little in my ego, and it's like my ego kind of gets to my head, and then I'm also where I'm too much of a giver, and it's like you find that balance, and there's different areas of our life where we do have to give more, right? If you're a service provider, you naturally have to give more. And then also too, when you're going to get a massage, you're naturally going to be receiving more. So there are different times in our lives where, and different situations, conversations where we're going to be doing more giving and receiving.
Wow, you sparked something in my mind. How many people in the audience could really use a massage right now? Throw in some likes in the chat or some love if you could, because you're right. You have to be open to receiving it too. I think that's important to note. You have to be open to receiving, which can be challenging, especially when we're going through our changes. There's a song. Oh wow, yeah, they're flying now. So lots of massages are due. Okay, make sure to put that on your list for your gratitude day or Thanksgiving day coming up. I want to now kind of shift into what does one do during the changes of our life, the changing seasons. So we're all in different points in our life. So when I say changing seasons, I'm talking about the 20s, 30s. For some of us 40s and beyond. What is a key part? So I'll start. One key part for changing for me is that I love that once I found out that my body's kind of replenishing its cells and many of the pieces of me that was a part of me 9 or 10 years ago is not there anymore. Yet there's a conscious being that thinks that it's Dave and and is acting as if. So that kind of thought experiment allows me to continuously reinvent myself. Not saying that I lose or just let go of everything that I've learned before, but it allows me to be open to change. So the things that I may not have been into before, I am now. For example, I just about every week eat kimchi and Brussels sprouts. I hated both of them as a child, but then now I understand not only the value of having good food and what it does to my gut biome, it also allowed me to expand my palate. So what I'm asking for us to kind of dive into is just some things that's helped you move through these challenging transitions, and sometimes not challenging transitions, sometimes fun.
Go ahead, Lillian.
Oh, geez, thank you. Um, I've been the most fortunate person. I've always been full of gratitude. And I think that when Oprah Winfrey was on the air, she suggested people do a gratitude journal. And I think it came at a time where it was very suggested to me. My grandmother had died. A year later, my husband left. Um, and so those transitions were hard. And then I had a young child. My son was maybe 5 or 6, and he was clearly struggling and turned out to be autistic, or diagnosed to be autistic. So all of those times, and then culturally, I didn't want to ask my parents, anyone for help. And financially, I was struggling in the sense that, fortunately I can make a good living, but I always put my kids first and worked around their schedules and all that stuff. So I think what got me through was a gratitude journal, which is a technique that you can do. People are also talking about the yoga, the meditation, taking the deep breaths. But the journal, I think, was most productive because it really focused on mind and putting down the reality. So you can write down, even if it's one thing that you're grateful for, like, I got out of bed today. I stopped crying, like all those things are big steps when you're really feeling like, wow, who can I ask to support myself? The other thing that has come into light was in the 80s, there was a book called The Four Agreements, which I tell everyone, if you talk to me, I'll tell you about that also. And what that allows you to do is put away all that self-talk that you're bad-mouthing yourself to. Because what the four agreements are is to be your best self, to be impeccable with your word, to not take things personally, and what's the last one? Okay, sorry, this is the geriatric.
Don't feel alone, because I'm blanking on it too, because I have
And
also read the four agreements.
and don't make judgments what it is. So you don't take things personally, and then you don't judge other people. Essentially, it's the wrong exactly word, but if you think each of those components, they are things where if you do those things, it's more of a positive spin on how you look at life, just like its gratitude journal is. So if you're doing your best self, as I was saying, like you got out of bed, that might be your best self for that day, if you're feeling really rotten. And so, you don't beat yourself up that you didn't get 10,000 things done. In my career, maybe when I was at the peak of my career, I was so type A was I wanted to fill every appointment of a 24-hour day. And if I didn't fill every appointment from, 7 in the morning until 4:30 with no breaks, no lunch, I would work straight through. It was sort of like the high I was getting was, oh, look, I got every minute of the day I'm, scheduled up.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's almost like, okay, well, let's see if we can sort of group these people so it's like I have more time for myself. But a lot of that is, the irony of that was that it was always, I'm altruistic. So even though I filled up my day, it wasn't for monetary reasons. And it wasn't really ego that Serenity was saying, balancing ego with you know, giving and compassion. It was that I was servicing kids who were on Medicaid, who did not have any other way of getting services. So that was my motivation, was thinking that I was helping these people get somewhere where they wouldn't have gotten before. So is that, maybe that is ego, but it really, from my point of view, was I was helping others to be better, be their best selves. And so
And
those
you were
two,
being altruistic. If I wanted to put that, just
yeah,
nudge that in there. You're being altruistic and supporting others.
yeah, I'm very altruistic. So anyway, so those two methods are what I would say were the initial things that catapult me to even how I live today. And then adding the third one was perspectively saying love over fear.
Love
So
over fear.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Those are quotables. Thanks for popping that in the chat, team, because I'm going to be coming back to look at that too. Serenity. So how about you? With these changings of seasons, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so changing of seasons, in the very beginning, as I was kind of going through life, I was actually very specifically like attaching to the seasons. And I was going to a holistic practitioner and realizing that some things in my life needed to be changed. I am somebody that's very overly ambitious, like very I guess wanting to kind of like level up all the time and like wanting to go super fast and not thinking that I had enough time. And I realized that mindset needed to kind of change. And so at first I was very naturally attaching to the seasons, and I was actually seeing each season to have its own sense of opportunity in our life and moving into a place of acceptance. That did have to alter and change, but I'll get into this a little bit more. So as I was getting into those changing of seasons, instead of being 120% all the time, there are different seasons for different aspects of life. So summertime is for getting out there and exploring and doing things and presenting ourselves out and forward. And spring is, well, let me go the direction after, excuse me. Fall is when we start to kind of shed those layers ever so slowly. So we're approaching fall right now. So it's where we're kind of gradually slowing down, and we're kind of finishing up anything that we want to be doing in the summer. And as we get into wintertime is all about introspection, having those connections with family, having those connections with friends, really doing some digging into our mental health and doing some rewiring as well. And then as we kind of come out of that, then we start to come into spring, because in wintertime, we're going to have these new ideas. We're going to have this new phase of ourselves, this new light of us that's going to be wanting to shine bright. And spring is springing out and showing that, showing the world, showing ourselves that new aspect. And so I started to move into kind of acceptance and also moving in with nature, because nature is grounding. Nature is where we all come from. Nature is what we are, in whole essence and truth. And so that really allowed for me to move into a place of acceptance and slow myself down and realize that I do have time. And there are different periods and different seasons for each aspect and different phases of us. And so moving into that acceptance helped. But once I became more of a bit of a digital nomad part-time, I realized that it was a little harder for me to attach to those seasons. So instead of moving into the physical season aspect, I just started to actually accept that, hey, I move into a quarterly aspect. And so quarterly, what does this feel like? Oh, I feel like I've put in a lot of effort. I've had a lot of big projects this quarter. Now I think I'm going to go ahead and move into being a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more calm, having more of that release, moving into more of that clarity, and then moving into those other phases and those descriptions, like I had mentioned, but seeing it in more in a quarterly sense. So having that acceptance really allowed, and aligning with the seasonal background really allowed for me to have that shifting perspective as well. And then I think there was one more as well, and it was something I mentioned earlier, which was approaching life with a little bit more curiosity. that really allowed for me to see things in a new light and to also see the different changes of season, because I wouldn't have been able to see those phases. I wouldn't have been able to see that connection to nature because those things aren't really talked about. They're not really discussed very often. Having that perspective isn't really something that's like very common. So if I wouldn't have approached things with curiosity, I wouldn't be able to receive new enlightenment.
Mic drop. Okay. Another thing about another thing about your excellent analogy that I truly love is when you're talking about nature, some people they feel like they're really disconnected or hard to get to nature. If you're in a bustling city, it's hard, but there's other opportunities to get into nature, even if you don't have the greenery behind you. For example, you can get that expansive view if you live in a city, looking at a city skyline. You know, the city is a part of nature. That skyline is a part of nature, which connects you, not only back to the earth, but back to yourself. And what you're talking about is, as far as your analogy, is fantastic. I see Claudia even said excellent analogy. I agree, because these changings of seasons, sometimes they're quarters, and we have to be okay with things ebbing and flowing. You talked about winter kind of going introspective, and as a therapist, I've supported people who've dealt with seasonal affective disorder, or just basically, and jokingly, it's called SAD, which is not funny, but maybe, I don't know, depending on your sense of humor. But when it gets dark, darker earlier, people tend to become more introspective. And if you don't have that open perspective where you are not, you're not stopping, you can get stuck up. Serenius, go ahead.
Yeah, as somebody who definitely is very heavily affected by the seasons, I can definitely attest to that. That was something initially I was like, I need to be happy. I need to be having 120% energy. Like, why do I not? And like at the very beginning, I was having a lot of dismay with it, and I didn't actually want to accept it. But then I started having to move into, I am just naturally affected by this. Now, what do I do? So I started moving into that place of acceptance. I started acknowledging and accepting that each season has its own offerings and positivity actually behind it. And I had to start seeing it as an opportunity or a lesson or a growth, and accepting that. And two, like I also got more inspired to also travel too, because in Washington, Seattle, which because you are also there, growing up there, there's 300 days of dark clouds. And so once we also move into that acceptance of like, I can acknowledge that I see this season as an opportunity, but I can also accept that I don't have to stay here, and I can see other opportunities out of this as well. Hence vacations, like that's a great time to take vacation. That's a great time to involve yourself in activities to be able to have that fun. That's a great time to start therapy. That's a great time to talk to us as guides. That's a great time to have that introspection, moving into that acceptance.
Absolutely. I see Dr. Emma even threw in there that she goes through to a hiking group. So how important is changing your crew, your team, your friends, your colleagues, the people that you connect with? How important is changing that dynamic and changing who you're around as you grow? How important is that? And I'll start with you, William. Like, how important has changing your connections been in your journey?
Good question. Now, I am, since we made that clear that I'm older, what's happened is that with Dr. Emma's hiking group and other things that we do, and even with Serenity's example of, going out to explore new environments and new countries, even, I think we have in our minds our different bucket lists. And sometimes we follow it very rigidly as to, at this age, we should be doing X, Y, and Z. So the way I'm trying to remember the question. No, just kidding. But the way that I handle that, I think that I'm different than most. I'm very sentimental and loyal to all my friends. So even though my seasons have changed, there's a core childhood group that I am still very close to. And that group is where I don't, I may not talk to them on a daily basis or even in a year or two, but if we reconnect, it's almost like it was yesterday. Then I have all these new people, and I find that the groups of people that I'm looking for, I was saying, Dr. Emma, is that I did have a hiking group. Every year in the fall, we would go check out the seasons and go to a different national park and hike. And I was the least competent of everyone. Like, these women were my age and close to my age, and they were triathletes and marathoners. And I was like the one bringing up the rear, but it was okay because I kept saying, oh, I'll just stay in this little cave here. You guys, tomorrow, when you come back down from the mountain, just pick me up. And they were laughing and they said, no, 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 you're making it all the way up. So even though the marathoners and the triathletes made it up in 3 hours, I made it up in 8 hours. But they were all there, supportive afterwards. So I think we choose appropriately who we're going to connect with, because the seasons do change, our priorities change, and our interests change. And we have to acknowledge that it's different. So now that I'm in my 70, I'm 70.
Hold on, pause for the cause. Let's celebrate.
Yay!
Yay!
New
All right.
decade. Woohoo! Chinese look at it differently. Thank you, everyone. Chinese look at it differently. They celebrate by decades. So starting at 60 is when that celebratory thing happens. So 70s, 80s, it all becomes more of a valued, badge of courage kind of thing. My mother's 94. She's going to be 95. And I can never imagine or visualize, and can you all, to be 90 years old? I just, like, it was never in my mindset. So if I have 20 more years to live, I have decided I would love to have a companion. Before it was like, okay, I'm self-reliant. I can do all this by myself. I don't need a man in my life, but I'm valuing now, as I get older, that's how things have changed for me, is I'm valuing the significance of having a companion, having someone that you can talk to and that can support you. And that's it. At the same time, it gets harder at my age because some of the availability is they want the female to be what they call the nurse in the purse. Does that make sense? So you'll find that out.
No, all right, maybe the nurse in
You'll
the purse.
find,
That's new for me. I'll have to
yeah,
look it
you
up
guys are
offline.
way too young for that. What happens is, because women are traditionally caretakers, then you're going to be the male counterpart's nurse. And for those of us who are professionals, we're also expected to be their purse. Where traditionally it wasn't that way. It was that the male will protect and take care of you till the day you die. And the other thing is that it's not that way. We're living longer and women are working. So it's a whole different perspective. So I would
Yeah.
love, yeah, I would love someone that it was an equal kind of thing. And in the millennials and all of you listening, maybe you can consider that, like you can consider about, what is it going to look like 20 years from now or 30 years from now?
I know that life planning, like because when you mentioned just imagining being 90, like I really dropped back in my body, like, wow, what would that look like?
Yeah.
So I want to give Serenity, I want to give you a chance too to talk about how your connections have changed. Have you had any pruning in your connections, or have your connections grown? I'm curious to learn.
Yeah, definitely. I first want to say that I totally can imagine myself at 90. I actually imagine myself as an old lady often, and I imagine myself being like this old lady that does yoga and has a garden and watches birds. Super serene, very serene. A totally different lifestyle than now. I just envision me being super relaxed and just in a peaceful place of stillness. But yes, to answer your question, as far as, how have relationships changed via the seasons? As somebody that's been through a lot in my time, I have actually I've gone through a lot of friendships. I've gone through a lot of connections because we attract what we are in the time that we're in. So say for instance, like I had my 10-year high school reunion recently, and I noticed a lot of old friendships that I was in and seeing a reflection of my past self. I am completely different now. So it's really hard to align with people that are in previous ways of life or previous ways of being in which we are not moving towards. And I found myself to be somebody where I am very direction oriented. I have things that I really want to do. I have things that I not need to, but things that I would like to accomplish. Like I plan on being a public speaker. I just finished my very first 2 books. Like I have to be very selective of the people that are in my circle, because if I am getting up on stage and doing public speaking, like I can't really have people in my circle that are swearing like sailors, talking about drugs and going out partying every single night. Like that's not the direction that I'm going into. And so I have to be kind of selective in that. And that's in full self-love and full care of myself and full support of my own visions. Like I don't really have a ton of support outside of LifeGuides. I personally support myself, and I have ever since I was little. I come from a very interesting background of alcohol and drugs. And so I've personally made a mental switch that each and every single person that I have in my circle, I try to actually steer away from a lot of that like party-esque lifestyle or addiction or anything like that, and moving myself that way. So each and every single season, excuse me, brings me a little bit more visual clarity as far as what I need, the person that I want to become. And envisioning that person that I want to become, I also envision who do I feel like would be best in my circle. And so I actually, for quite some time, I didn't really have a lot of close friends. And I actually moved into just having coaches and mentors and guides, actually, because I needed to do quite a bit of transitioning out of where I was. And usually what comes to light, and when I see that it's time for me to do that, is when I'm in a repetitive cycle and I bring myself out of it. I get that clarity and seeing other people that were in my circle are also stuck in that circle and repetition of those habits and behaviors. But the people that I do have that are close with me, that I continuously keep with me, are people that are also doing similar processing, that are continuously wanting to do better, that are wanting to learn how to be their best selves, that are wanting to push past and through some of those challenges. And it's not easy, but at the same time, like those are people that I choose to keep in my circle, because those are people I can practice boundaries with. Those are people that I can also move with as I am progressing towards doing better.
So I want to add on to what you're saying, because from an older perspective, decades older than you, it's very interesting when you mention class reunions, which is a wonderful time to look at those seasons, because my high school, I potentially could have gone to 3 high schools, of which I've maintained strong enough relations with everyone that I am invited back to 3 different high schools. Okay. So the first one was my childhood, where we moved when I was in the end of 7th grade. The second one was when we moved at the end of my sophomore year, and then the one I graduated from. So when I look back at all these things, it's very interesting that you're saying that, Serenity, because there are those clicks. If you look at that as one of the conversations of the change of seasons, you may be very close to those people. And then as you grow older, as you say, you go a different path. But here's what I'm going to say in reflection, so that if, I've had my 55th reunion or whatever it is. What's interesting is that people then come together again. And in the fact that they accept where you are at that time, as opposed to all the things that were important in your 20s. What's your job? What are you doing? What's your, status? How much money are you making? That kind of thing. I think that the purity of, as you get older, of reflecting back, is being able to see those seasons as they passed and how they grew and they changed, and how if you value the general premise of love over fear, and not make those judgments about other people, but acceptance. And that's what we're all talking about, is accepting our world with all the politics, geopolitics that's going on. How do we accept everyone else? Because we all are from different cultures and experiences. But if we have that love in our heart, we are able to look past some of those things. We don't have to be their buddies, but at least we can love them for whatever they're offering to us. And so my premise has been for a while is that there's always something good about someone, always. If you think about delinquent fathers, because I work with kids, delinquent fathers or fathers who are bad role models, the kids will love them no matter what.
Yeah.
Who's that Harrison, that Harrison, the actor?
Woody Harrelson. Yeah, Woody Harrelson.
His father is in jail for murdering someone. But does he still love his dad? Of course. Does he see him? No, he wasn't, significant in his life. But you see that whole premise of forgiveness and acceptance. So I don't know if I'm off topic, but I'm just saying that in different seasons, we appreciate things with different weights. And in the end, as you get older, hopefully it'll come back together, because that's what we really want to talk about, is unity and not having that the divisiveness or the separate one-upmanship that people sometimes have depending on what age you're at. So I just wanted to mention that. But you're right, Serenity. If I were you, I use, by the way, everyone, I love Serenity. I use her as a good example. She has her head together, and at least she has the convictions of what she wants to do and where she's going. And I was more aware of the generation of, pleasing, you had to do certain things. And, my grandmother living with me is one example. I wouldn't have done it any other way, but it was sort of like that, had to do something. Whereas now Serenity is able to be unbridled, able to see what she wants to do and move towards those goals. But at the same time, she has made very sincere and honest relationships with some of us, which is really nice. And she will have that also to catapult her, to support her and get her to the next place where she's going. Love
Wonderful.
you.
Absolutely. I totally see. I 100% want to say that I see everybody has value. There is one area and famous saying when I say approach things with curiosity, I also approach people with curiosity. There is this famous saying where it's everybody is your guru. Everybody has the ability to teach you something, and everybody has an offering. So I see Lillian as I see you as teaching me patience, because right, you have beautiful stories, you have so much history to share. So I sit patiently and I sit and I watch and I learn. And Dr. Dave, he has a ton of psychology background, and I hear the way that he talks analytically about things, and some of the words and phrases that he uses. He has an accentuated vocabulary, and I personally like to learn those aspects, because I also too love speaking intelligently and learning new words and learning new languages as well. So I see each and every single person's offerings, and I see every little aspect of a person and what they can offer. And I do also accept that people do have seasons in our life, right? So there's that famous saying that's also, people are here for a reason, they're here for a season, or they're here for a lifetime. And so I can also acknowledge when people are here for a lifetime. And I foundationally say that my family is that. And my family has actually been teaching me to move more into that place of acceptance, because I love my family wholeheartedly and I do accept them where they're at. And I do put in that energy and that effort and that time. But two, there's also creating those boundaries. There's two, also creating and communicating that level of closeness, that level of connection, and figuring and knowing that they have an influence in your life as well, to where you're going, how you're supporting yourself. And I can accept and acknowledge where people are at in their seasons, and also acknowledge hey, it's not, I don't need to be super involved in this season. I look forward to seeing where they're at in their next season. Maybe we can grow closer in that. right? So if somebody's, say, going through a divorce and they're very intensely deep in it, they're super emotional, right? They're going through all of their belongings, their partners are still fighting. That might not be the best time to interject, especially with family when you have more of that emotional tie and that emotional bond. So I can acknowledge, I can appreciate, and I can respect where they're at and let them know that I'm here for them. But I can also protect myself and create that boundary and know that this is not the best time for me to be involved. Let's go celebrate your divorce after it's final, and let's, you know, go out to eat. Let's go to another country. Let's go to Mexico. Let's go to the beach. You know? So
All
there
right, let's
is,
go to Peru.
say again, sorry.
Oh, I said, right, let's go to Peru.
Exactly. So there is moving into that acceptance. And that was also one I wanted to acknowledge. And thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't mention that aspect of it.
Wow. It's a big love fest today, and I appreciate that. I'm gonna continue with the motif of change, and yeah, another unnecessary big word, but the motif of change. I'm gonna make sure I kind of match the glasses everyone's rocking today. Pop on mine, and with some continuous changes, just to give us a way out as you two are telling everyone, you know, goodbye. I'm gonna pop on the lights. We're starting this new thing where we kind of show love through light, because we're all light workers, working on each other, working on ourselves and our friends, and we're all trying to show up as much as we can in the right place. So I want to give you both an opportunity to say bye to everyone as we continue this love fest. We'll start with Serenity.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope that you were able to gain as much value as I did. And I'm very thankful to have been here and to be able to be here with Lillian and Dr. Dave, and also Team LifeGuides. You know who you are. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the community. And above all, thank you for being here for yourself.
And Lillian, we'll end off with you.
Okay, that's a love thing for you. I don't know how to better say it than what Serenity did. And I am honored and always happy to be here for everyone. And I hope for those who are listening that we got a little more perspective of who we are, and the ability that Life Guides will be a very supportive community for everyone who takes an opportunity to take care of themselves by maybe sharing with us, or feeling safe. That you will always feel safe in our community, and you will see that there are so many wonderful guides that will help you find or talk it out with you as to guide you where you want to go. But thank you for this time. I love you guys.
All right. Thank you all. Bye, everyone. It's been a love fest.
Bye.
Bye-bye.